Sitting here on the top rail of the fence at the podcast ranch, overlooking the open plains of Canton, Ohio. This is the Hump Podcast, and I am your host, Jon Dietz.
All things are possible. That's what they told me when I was young.
The Hump Podcast is about hardworking people who, with blood on their knuckles, calluses on their hands, scabs on their shins, and sweat on their brows. People who, out of sheer principle, just would not quit. And by continued, tenacious hard work, found themselves in positions that could make a difference in someone else's life as well as their own, just from being hard working class humps. Humility, love, and genuine respect for all in perpetuity. Humble, unwavering, motivated people sacrificing for all.
Welcome, everybody, to another live stream on the Apex Communications Network. You will notice that we have a old friend of ours that has come back to us after experiencing recovering from some shoulder surgery. And so thank you to everybody that has reached out and wanted to check in on Jon over the last week or two. He is, doing well. The recovery process is in order. And in his saying, it's just, about advancing the cause one step at a time, day by day. And that's how he's taking it. So, Jon, welcome back to hanging out with us.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So outside of the shoulder surgery, everything been good? Doing all right?
Yeah. Everything's good. Family's healthy. Dogs seem to be fine. Summer's getting ready to come at us. So yeah, it's good time.
On the horizon. I know that's when we had that little bout of like cold and snow in May, it was just everybody else was like, this is the icing on the cake. Here we are.
Yeah. Like whatever it was, 17th, 16th, whatever it was of May, you had snow. It's like, that's pretty cool in Ohio. And 3.5 months later, we'll be wearing our jackets to the high school football game or whatever,
Exactly. Yeah. We have that short window of time,
right,
in the Midwest with the summer.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a shout out to my cousin Tobias here. So Bister is a village in Slovakia. We'll go ahead and give him a shout out. Thanks for tuning in, Tobiasko. Dakujem pekne. And we'll give it a couple more seconds for people to kind of filter in, and I'll explain what we're going to talk about today. So this has been a live stream that we've had on the docket for a little while. And just for, to give Jon a little bit of a chance to kind of recover from the shoulder surgery and everything. I'm not a slave driver by any means. So, we're not going to force a live stream when there's important time that needs to be taken for recovery. But this one has been something that's been requested by you guys for a while, which is the episode where Jon is going to talk about some of his experiences raising children and some advice that he's going to be able to offer to both new parents and people that have been parents for an extended period of time. So the questions that we're going to kind of go over today, I want to announce these at the beginning. I know we normally kind of announce them as we go along, but I think for this one specifically, I want you to be able to have the entire context in your head from the very beginning. So question 1 today is going to be: love is spelled T.I.M.E. Invest it in those you love. Number 2 is going to be: kids won't cost you any more than you have. And number 3 is: the moment my girls learned how to ride a bike was one of the most exhilarating moments in my life. Now, when I first read those questions, because the way that we get these questions is we source them from these documents that whenever anybody wants to start a podcast or start to getting into writing or anything like that, there was a piece of advice that was given to me to write what Ed Robinson, the gentleman that gave me the advice, calls the 52 Theses. And these are 52 phrases that you live your life by. And it's meant to cover all 52 weeks of the year so that you have something to post about or something to include in a chapter for every week of the year. John went above and beyond and ended up with 80 plus of these sayings. I think we're into the 100 plus of these sayings. And that's what kind of gave birth to these live streams, was all of these pieces of advice that John took the time to go back through his life and look for these pieces of advice that he's chosen to live his life by, things that he's learned, and now we're passing off the dividends to you. So, John, why don't we start with that first one? The love is spelled T.I.M.E. Invest it in those you love.
Well, it's real. For me, it's real easy because some families are planned. Some families just happen. In our case, our girls were planned. They were desperately waited for, and we were ready to love them, nurture them, and take care of them for the rest of their life. And so I just think, now first, let me say, especially to the parents, is number one, I know everybody has to go out and make a living. Okay. So if you're over the road salesman, if you're a truck driver, if you're, bartender, whatever, everybody's got to make a living to take care of their family. That's probably priority one. Okay. Mm-hmm. But then outside of that, there's the peripheral time we spend with our friends, we spend with our hobbies, we spend with our sports, we spend with whatever. And a lot of that can be negotiated or readjusted. So the one thing that mattered to me from the time my babies were, before they were born, is I want to make sure that I spent the time with them to really be a part of their lives. And so in doing so, that's how I structured my career. Long before I had kids, I knew that I wanted to have evenings off and weekends off. And so I looked for jobs that would give me that, flexibility. And that's what I found, and that's where I ended up making my career. But everybody, the one non-renewable resource is time, and you never get it back. You never, ever, ever get it back. Amen. And so I made up my mind that I was going to spend every moment that I possibly could with my girls, raising them. And I did. Now, in that true story, I lost friends. I lost opportunities for hunting trips, fishing trips, in at least one case, a promotion. But I just wanted to make sure that I spent all the time that I could with my girls so that they would feel the love and nurturing that we wanted to do. Girls especially get their self-esteem from their fathers, not from their mothers. And so I wanted to make sure that my two got their share of self-esteem, and boy, have they. So, but they just, but anyway, I just think it's critical to spend all the time you can to have a good, healthy, loving relationship with your kids.
Yeah, I agree. And something that I love about you and the way that you convey things is that you're able to kind of help people see a path forward even if they've gone off the beaten path, right? Sure. And so something that I want to address is, if there's somebody out there listening that feels as though they're kind of going through a crisis maybe, where they are having this come to Jesus moment where they've realized that they haven't been doing that, they haven't been investing their time correctly, they've been, X, Y, or Z. How do you recommend that they go about learning to invest their time correctly, but then also trying to rebuild those bridges without um, drowning in the guilt of the fact that they've neglected to do that for so long?
Well, listen, I've thought about this many times. When I don't care if you're 75 and your kids are 40, as long as God puts another breath of air in your lungs, you have an opportunity to legitimately, sincerely patch up or make up for whatever time you have left. Okay. So you have to but you have to make sure that, for example, my girls caddied one year. And the one of the foursome came and said in almost like a bragging way how bad his young daughter was crying when he left because he was going to go golfing and she wanted him to stay home with them. Now my daughters were standing like 3 and 9 on the foursome, so they were across from each other. And independently, without telling each other, they both thought, man, my dad would have never done that. My dad would have stayed home with us. And so they went on, and then they got together. And one of them, if not both of them, said they had a sick spot in their stomach just listening to the story. Well, here's the thing, and it's a priorities thing. I don't care what anybody says. It's a priorities thing. Do you want to spend 4 or 5 hours golfing? Or do you want to spend 4 or 5 hours with your children? It's your choice. You want to go trap shooting with the fellas? Or do you want to? So the point is, it doesn't matter. It's what your priorities are. I'm not saying you can't golf, fish, trap shoot, go to quilting, hang out with the girls, whatever you want to do. That's all good, fine, and healthy. But I always say just make sure that your stuff is tight at home first.
Right.
Usually the only time I would go do stuff like that is if my wife and daughters were doing something that did not include me. I'd go and hang with my buddies or do whatever it is that I do.
Right.
But, and again, everybody can justify it however they want to justify it. But if T.I.M.E spells love, you got to spend the time with your kids. And if you're not, then that's your call. But in my case, I made it crystal clear. Number one priority in my life was my family. And so that's just the way I spent my time. And looking back, the friends I lost, no loss at all. The time I went, hopefully God will give me enough air in my lungs to do the things, go fishing with friends or hunting or whatever it is that I want to do. But my number one priority was to spend the T.I.M.E with my girls, and that's what. And if friends wanted to come along, I have a dear friend of mine. We used to run around just like we always did. We just took my girls with us, and so it's just and he was cool. He understood the situation. He too had 2 daughters. And so he understood my girls were young and how important it was for me to spend time with them. And so we went and just did everything we was normally going to do. We just took my girls along as well. So,
yeah. And that actually, before we move into the second question, I want to explore that specifically, taking your girls along with you, right? You just recently went on a vacation, and it was the entire family, getting into a car and then pictures from the Grand Canyon and all these amazing things. And we talked about how, in my eyes as a kid growing up, those were my favorite memories, driving across the country with my family, getting to the point where we kind of want to murder each other after 30 hours in the car together. But, seeing the Black Hills with my dad and looking at Mount Rushmore, going to Yellowstone and these types of things. And now this is not when your girls are little anymore, but this is when your girls are now, in their late teenage years, early 20s.
20 and 21.
Yeah, so 20 and 21. And that foundation that you set as children now carries into that 20-year plus time range, and you're going on these vacations and still have those amazing family bonding moments because of
Right.
that precedent
Right.
that you said.
Just like the other day, I had to go to see a doctor, hour away. 20 and 21 years old, both my girls go, "Hey, Dad, we want to go too." Jumped in the vehicle with me. We went to see the doctor. They stayed in the car. I was in there for about an hour and a half, and then came back out. We went and caught lunch. That's something else I want to point out to you too. When we were on our way home, my one daughter wanted Chick-fil-A, and my other daughter wanted Arby's. So I said, perfect. We went to Arby's, and then we went to Chick-fil-A. And we got everything done we needed to get done.
Yep,
And so everybody was happy. Priorities were hit. And we went through the Cuyahoga Valley Forest and our national park, and we just had a huge time coming home, laughing, having fun, the whole thing. But where's the crime in taking? I don't want to be a pope. Where's the crime in taking the time? Where's the crime in me driving to Arby's and then going up 5 or 6 blocks, turning left, and go through Chick-fil-A? Where's the crime? We still spent the time together. That's what was most important to me.
Oh yeah.
So
My mom talks about it all the time, and she's like a little kid that just found a entire tub of bubble gum every time all of us are in the house together.
yeah,
Because my sister's moving at a million miles an hour. I'm doing what I'm doing. My little brother is 18, so he's doing his thing. But whenever we're at the dinner table, it's like a comedy show. I mean, I don't think we've gone a single family dinner without somebody getting food stuck in their nose because they started laughing mid-bite, or somebody having to leave because they spit water on themselves or something like that, because it's just we're so raw with each other, and we've been that close-knit family for so long that our dinners will go from a comedy show to a Shakespearean drama, back to baseline, to everybody's talking about their problems and what's making them happy in life and what issues they're encountering, from all the way from my dad down to my youngest brother. And that all happened because they took the time to build that relationship between all of us. And we didn't notice it before, but now that I'm 25, my sister's 22, and my brother's 18, all three of us realize that the only reason why we're so close knit as siblings is because my parents were very purposeful
right.
about that kind of stuff.
I have a friend that I'm told has a couple $1 million condo in the Carolinas. He's invited my wife and I to join them several times, many times. I never did because my girls weren't invited too. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going and doing stuff like that on your own.
Right.
But in my case, I wanted to spend the time with my kids more. Now, I had another friend that invited us to go to the Big Ten Championship. But guess what? Everybody was invited. And so we all went as a family out and enjoyed that time with friends, but together. And again, I don't want to bore anybody with the details, but to me, it's just wherever your priorities are, and if you want to invest the time.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to move us into the second question here, because I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, especially like with everything that's going on right now. I know a lot of people that are trying to have children, or are women that are about to be due and are going to be bringing a life into the world and are scared right now because of everything that's going on, the pandemic, the economy, and all the other stuff. To the point where I've had somebody look at me and say, I don't want to have children because I don't want to bring them in to what I may not be able to provide to them. Right. And this second question really, I think, nails that. So why don't we explore the kids won't cost you any more than you have?
I had a very wise mentor in my life. His name was Jim Haney. He has since passed away. But many times I'd have discussions with him about things that was going on in life. I'd like to tell you it was my analogy, but it wasn't. It was his. And I had a very similar conversation with him that your friend just had, where I said, "Hey, Jim, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford kids." And he said, "Hey, Johnny, kids don't cost you any more than you have." And that's so profound to me because they're right. Here's what's almost free. Clean is almost free. Clean clothes, clean face, clean hand, clean place to sleep. That's almost free. So love, incredibly free. Just love them. And kids can have fun. How many times you heard the story about a kid gets a gift for Christmas, they set the gift out of the box and end up playing in the box?
Yeah. Yep.
Every kid doesn't have to have whatever the latest PlayStation or whatever it is going on. So kids don't cost you any more than you have. You just do the best you can. But number one is have fun. I heard one time about a bunch of Fortune 500 CEOs, and the one thing they said that they looking back at their career that they missed out on was the time. And I don't want to go past question one and go past question two and by going back to question one. But if you spend the time with your kids, you'll have the money to do some things. You may have the money to do a lot of things, depending on where you are financially. But the most important thing is that you get to spend and invest the time and let them know that they're loved. Yep. And go for a walk, do anything, read to them. I used to do this thing when my girls were little. It was the life and times of Mr. McFibber. And it was a pretend book. It was real big. And one would sit on my right, one would sit on my left, and I'd get this pretend book in which they each had half. We'd put the book together. I'd lick my finger, go through the pages, and I'd tell them a story that was about 1%, 2% true about me, and then I would fictionalize the rest of the story and tell them a long bedtime story, The Life and Times of Mr. McFibber. Didn't cost a thing. To this day, magic to them. To this day, they loved it. What did it cost? It cost me to sit on the side of their bed, one of them, in their little jammies, the other one in their little jammies. And what else was funny? One of them would screw up the pages, flip the pages of this imaginary book. And so I'd be telling them a story about me working a team of horses with the Amish, and they'd flip the pages, and I'd go right into the time I spilled milk all over myself when I was eating cookies. Like that was the story 3 chapters up,
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'd go, no, girls, who did that? We can't do that. Then I'd go back to 26 imaginary pages and finish telling the story. It was free. Kids don't cost you any more than you have. Mm-hmm. You just do the best you can. Instead of 26 pair of Nikes, maybe you only get 3. Instead of getting a computer every 3 years, maybe you stretch it out, get a computer every 6 years. But the point is, they don't cost you any more than they have. You just can, instead of getting a bunch of candy, maybe you only get to eat apples. But on and on and on.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
Well, and I think too, kind of with that last little sequence that you went on there, instead of this, or, instead of a new computer every 3 years, we're doing this. I think that mixture between 1 and 2, kids won't cost you any more than you have and the time. My dad did well for himself, right? I mean, we didn't really ever struggle as a growing up that I can remember, but all of my clothes were 2nd or 3rd degree hand-me-downs from my cousins.
Right.
My favorite pair of running shoes were my cousin's running shoes prior to being mine. And we had to learn, like, we didn't get a whole bunch of toys, and all this other kind of stuff. It was more practical stuff. But my parents were always very big on being able to go outside and being able to be thankful and be able to have fun with what you have, not with what you want. Because they were very big on when you have something and you may not have, you see another kid, right? This whole grass is greener type of thing as a child. You see another kid with a cooler toy, or you see another kid with the newest shoes or a new t-shirt or whatever else. They were huge on learning to be grateful with what you have, not envious of what other people may have.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that, when as a parent looking back, obviously I'm not there yet, but I've talked to a lot of my friends that, oh, I wish that I could give my kid what I didn't have, as growing up. But then I'm thinking about it, and then I ask them, I'm like, outside of, some very outlier scenarios, I'm like, would you have made it different? Would you be who you are today if you hadn't had that time? If you hadn't been forced to have more fun with the box than the toy, or been creative rather than just having an iPad. I
Right.
That's something that I think about a lot, is watching people that take their children and give them an iPad and then let them zone out for hours and hours at a time, rather than investing time, or for like taking them and teaching them to be creative, or there's these other things. What is that doing to the relationship? They're looking at the technology now as their parent, I think,
Right.
in my head. you know I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, like maybe over technologizing the kids early on, or do you think that that's having an effect on their ability to be creative, or even be bored? I feel like kids aren't even okay with being bored nowadays, or letting their
Right.
mind go blank, because they're constantly having to be plugged into something.
Right. Well, listen, I'm sure there's data that'll prove that all this technical stuff is great for kids. I'm sure there's data that'll prove it's terrible for them.
Hmm.
I know, again, living on the line that was between poverty and middle class growing up, some of the magical times when my dad and I would go for a walk just out in the field or in the woods, and he would take his pocket knife and he'd cut off a walking stick, one small for me, one bigger for him. And he would round the edges off with his knife and make it perfect. And they looked almost identical, just difference in size. And we'd go walking through the woods and jumping rabbits and doing whatever it is we did. That's not very high tech. But boy, sitting here all these years later, it was magic. I can tell you that it was magic, because I was able to spend the time. The bad thing about, in this day and age, we all have to know how to use computers, cell phones, or you'd be left behind. Right now, all the schooling that's going on in home, if you don't have a computer at home hooked up to, Wi-Fi, the internet or something, you can't get educated right now. Okay, so I understand the value of all that stuff, and it's really good, but it shouldn't be everything. There again, so many parents use these things as babysitters. They turn on the TV, they turn on the laptop, they do whatever, and they let the kids sit there in the back of the car and do nothing while they're traveling. It gives them peace. There's some good to that, some not so good.
Right.
But again, let's go back to the onset of this whole thing. I think that everything in moderation. If you're doing all that stuff and your kids have all that technology and all that stuff, that's probably fantastic. But the real question is, are you giving them the real mommy and daddy time? Are you spending the time when you can to enjoy the time with them, to love them, to do all that stuff? And then the one thing too, like with my girls, with the technology, as you know, you get on the internet, it can take you anywhere, and it can take you places that young kids should not be.
Right.
So the one thing I always made sure of is my kids knew, let me find out one time that you went someplace you shouldn't be, and I will drive a fire axe through that computer. We're not going to put up with that nonsense. And you know what? The 20 and 21 years old, they tell me now how that resonated with them back then. But you have to mean what you say and say what you mean, and follow through with that in love and discipline. But at the same time, I think all that technology, you have to work it in somewhere, because if you don't, kids are going to be left behind. My parents wouldn't have any idea how to do a computer. I know a fair amount about it, but nothing compared to you, nothing compared to my daughters, And so you're crazy if you think you can keep them away from it, but it just has to be in healthy doses that's controlled and beneficial.
Yeah, I like that. I like that balance. Being
Right.
able to find that middle ground between benefit and just chalking it up and using it as a babysitter. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that. So this is the final question is actually the one that I think I'm the most curious about. Because your eyes light up every time I say this sentence. And so I'm really excited to hear everything surrounding this last question. And it's the moment my girls learned how to ride a bike was one of the most exhilarating moments in my life. Now, why was that, John?
Okay. Let me tell you something. Not to bore you with anything I've done in my life, but I used to be a firefighter. One of my specialties was heavy rescue. That was pretty exciting. I've fly fished the Bighorn River in Montana with a Crow Indian guide. Pretty exciting. I've hunted wild Rocky Mountain elk successfully. Pretty exciting. I've flown airplanes by myself cross country. Pretty exciting. Okay. But when I saw my daughters struggle and fall, struggle with the training wheels and fall, struggle with the training wheels, can't get the balance. Then you take the training wheels off, which is metaphorically happens a lot in life. At some point, you got to take the training wheels off. And to see them, you push them with no training wheels and they crash and on and on and on. Well, then finally I took them over to the school baseball diamond. The sand was fairly hard and it gave them the push and they swerved and wobbled and put it down, swerved and wobbled and made it a little further, put it down. But the time that they swerved, wobbled, got control, straightened up, and took off around that baseball diamond was absolutely magic to me because it was a huge accomplishment for them. It was awesome as a father, and my wife was there, and it was awesome as a father to be the one to push and let go of that seat and just say, pedal, baby, pedal. And they catch on and away they go. So of all the cool things I've done in my life, I proposed to my wife in a cool way, got to get married, a lot of cool things. Of course, the birth of my children was exhilarating, but man, to see them as young kids take off on that bicycle, and they both did it, and they both did it in the same place, year or so apart. But it was just the magic of watching them just grow and accomplish something in front of my very eyes. And so when I look back at a lot of the cool things I've got a chance to do in my life, man, that's right up there in the top 1, 2, or 3.
Now, with that concept, the training wheels, the falling, the getting back up, the moving, have you felt any similar experiences to the bike ride, watching them grow up and try different things in their either careers or throughout high school in sports? Does that feeling kind of resonate, or is it?
Absolutely. And here's the thing, Jon, let's just go back over the time we've known each other. There was a time you had training wheels. Me too. There's a time we thought, well, shit, it's time to let the wheels off, see what happens. Yeah. Didn't come out as good as we'd hoped. But each time it got a little bit better and we got more comfortable with it to where there comes a time you think you can put a positive product on the field and help somewhere in life. Well, the same with my girls. My girls, when they got into sports, they weren't very good. They tried, they got better. They never did become Olympic athletes. I'm not so sure my one daughter ever won a race. I think we were happy when she didn't finish last. But she got better, when they tried out for cheerleading, when they tried out for different things that they tried to do, it wasn't. And so it hasn't been like I can sit here and tell you that my kids have been victorious at a world-class level on everything. But here's what I can tell you. Because of the learning, because of the people that were mean to them, all the different things they were able to overcome over the years. You've met my girls. Right now, when I put my girls out on the field, it's a pretty good product. And I think they're going to be beneficial in society. I think you're going to be able to handle a few bumps in the roads, some ups and downs. And that's what, so the bike is actual and it's metaphorical. The story I told you really did happen. But at the same time, it's happened over and over again throughout their life. And they've had some really good successes. And they've had some things that weren't that successful. But you just keep on dusting your pants off and throwing leg. We had a horse years ago. His name was Bo. Bo was running through the arena one time with my two girls on the back. My daughter, Lauren, was in the back. And as he started to run, she dug her heels in to his flanks. Anybody that knows what that is, it's just in front of their back legs. And that's what tickles them like in rodeo to make them buck. Our sweet horse, Bo, he never bucked, but he started bucking that day. And he ran almost straight in the wall and dumped them both off in a turn. And they both hit the ground, wham, hard. Okay? So guess what? The first thing I did, got a hold of Bo, walked over, didn't even give him a chance to think. Set Lauren up, put her on the saddle, take him around the arena. As soon as she was done, didn't get a chance to vote, set Audra up on the saddle, boom, take him around the arena. Okay? And that's how it is in life. You crash bicycles, you crash horses. Thank God I didn't crash a plane. But you crash things, and sooner or later, you get up and you dust your stuff off and you move on to the next thing. And I think that's, so like I said, it's literal and it's metaphoric, but I think it matters. And at that particular time with the bicycles, man, it mattered a lot to me.
Yeah. And Chris Ledoux says it really well. You know, you got to cowboy up when you get knocked down.
Yeah.
Right back in the saddle is the moment you hit the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I did for them. And, did it on the bike, did it on the horse. And there's been things that had nothing to do with anything mechanical or animal, but they still got knocked back on their hind ends every once in a while. And the deal is get up, love them, tell them how proud you are of them, dust their pants off, back in the game we go.
Yeah.
That's love.
That you being able to compare love to that concept, right? That giving people the ability to get up and keep moving. Me and my aunt just had a really, really raw conversation. And if you want to go back and look at it, people that are listening, you can go back through our timeline and look for the conversation with my aunt, Janet Wilkes. It will be in the title. We dug deep. I mean, we talked in that live stream. We talked about the moment where she was sitting in my truck and I looked over at her and I said, Aunt Janet, I've been abusing drugs for the last 3 years. And we talked about what that moment was like. And we talked about what my path was to telling my parents about it. We talked about me getting pulled over on 62 at 2:00 in the morning, and all of these darker, times that I got knocked on my hind end, mostly because I was a jackwagon, but I still got kicked, right? And the one thing that she said in that live stream that just resonated with me, she was like, because I told her, I was like, I attribute a lot of why I am who I am today and what I'm doing right now to you. And she said, I didn't do anything but love you and listen. She said, you did the rest yourself. All I did was listen and let you know that you were going to be loved regardless of what you had done in the past. She was like,
right.
And she made it a point to that's not okay. But the fact that you're telling me, because at the time I was already a sophomore in nursing school, I was doing well for myself, I was in the military, had my own place. So the only reason why I wanted to talk about it is because it had been weighing on me for so long. And I wanted to get it out. And she was like, the fact that you're bringing it up, just the way that you talk about love and time and everything is hitting super hard just thinking about that moment with my aunt, where all she said was, I didn't do anything but listen and love you.
Right.
And that's all the support.
Well, guess what? Here's the secret too. This thing we're talking about, it's not just for kids. Yeah, it's good for kids, and I hope everybody loves their kids. But it's not just for kids. There's somebody to your right or to your left that's going through something right now that just needs you to be non-judgmental, be gracious, show some grace, be gracious,
Yep.
and love. And let them love, especially men. Men always got to be such badasses. They don't want to show any affection, all that stuff. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, friend, dude, I am here for you. If you got something you need to get off.
So insane.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can't, all the time I talk to my buddy that's a Navy SEAL, and I end every single phone call with, hey man, I love you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where he's headed.
Guess what? In my house, here's our policy. We will hug you and we will decide when the hug is over. Let me tell you a quick story. My dad is a big two-fisted, tough, hard guy. He was a tough guy. And I'd say this all the time, but it's true. His hands were like 80 grit sandpaper wrapped around bricks. Okay. And I don't recall him ever telling me he loved me growing up. Well, now I'm about 20 years old and I'm on the verge of being kind of a strapping lad at that point. Mm-hmm. I was farming and I was landscaping and I was digging graves and all that stuff. And I remember one time I walked up to him and we would always shake hands, like men, we'd shake hands. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll see it. We shake hands because we're tough men, right?
Right.
I shook his hand. I got a good grip on him. Hooked my finger up over the palm of the back heel of his hand, so I had him good. Squeezed down. I put the swim move on him, hold him across his arm across his chest, put him in a headlock, and kissed him hard on his sweaty cheek. And I said, yeah, guess what? I love you. And you know what? That broke him.
Yeah.
He told me he loved me every time we parted, every time from then on till the day he died.
Wow.
There's no crime, dude. I'm telling you. There's no crime in kindness. There's no crime in love. Yeah. And I don't care how big and burly and badass everybody thinks they are. I'm going to tell you what. There's nobody. I watched my dad choke a cow unconscious with his bare hands. There's nobody tougher than that. And he was that guy. But guess what? When I put the swim move on him, I decided when that hug was over, and after that, we told each other we loved each other all the time. There's no crime in that, Jon.
And I've watched many a burly man, as you say, have their finger wrapped around, and it'd be completely. Now I won't say demolished. Demolished is the wrong word, but their toughness disabled by a small child. Or somebody that tells them that they care about them.
Yeah, but guess what? It's the same if you're a grown-up child too. If you let people know, people are starving to death for love. They're starving to death for affection. They're starving to death for somebody that respects them, somebody that cares.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter if they're a baby, if they're a toddler, or if they're your 71-year-old grandfather. Mm-hmm. They probably need somebody to just go ahead and jerk them in close, give them a kiss on the cheek, and go, guess what? Whether you like it or not, I love you, and I will decide when this hug is over.
Yeah. It is absolutely that statement right there is people being thirsty for that, and needing it more than ever. I think that's a big reason why this segment specifically does so well. Why we have thousands of people that watch these videos week to week. Because they want that raw emotion feeling, right? It's me and my little brother. Like I said, Sam is 18 years old, right? And so I'm at this point on the other side of being a jackass 18-year-old and trying to go back and say, listen, this is how I thought when I was your age. This is what I learned in the time from 18 to 25. This is what I wish I would have done different. And one of my big things to him all the time is some of the mantras that I've adopted from just being around you, right? Where I'm like, you always leave a positive footprint. You always treat people with respect. You don't be afraid to tell people that you love them. And he was talking to me the other day and he was like, it's crazy to him what the standard is for a good guy.
Right.
These days. Right. He was like, and he was joking, but he was like, basically all I need to not do is not cuss at them. And I'm a good guy. And I was like, wow, that's a sad standard. But then when you have somebody that is that outlier that sticks out because we act different, because we hold ourselves to a different standard because we choose to invest time. And it's not just relationships. That's not what I'm talking about. Just, choosing to invest time with the people that you love, whether that's friends, family, or a significant other, making sure that they know it consistently and not even saying it, but showing it. And making sure that they know that I'm not just telling you I love you. I'm going to give you a hug and I'm going to decide when it's over. I'm not
Right.
just to tell you I love you. I'm also going to come pull you out of the ditch at 3:00 in the morning if you need it. Those
I have
types of things.
a friend that I'm very, very close with, and he had a dog, black lab, but it was a big dog, but a dog, family pet that died. Well, he was crushed. And guess what? I said, you know what? Let me come over, be with you. Let me dig the dog's grave for you. And so I did that. Well, that was more love than giving him a hug at that point. Be there with him, dig the dog's grave, be a part of that really, really painful moment in his life. And so there again, it doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be monumental. It just to care.
Yep.
Just to care, just to help, just to listen, just to not judge. Just to say, you know what, I'm here.
Yeah, there's a friend of mine that works at the hospital, and I'll never forget. She's having a really, really, really rough time. And I won't dive into necessarily why, but all I did was take a cookie from the break room, put it in the microwave for 15 seconds, and then put it in front of the desk that she was charting at, and said, "Here, like I feel like you need this, right?" And then the running joke for like ever on the ICU is that if somebody was having a bad day, all they needed was a warm cookie.
Right.
Right. And she remembers that that was over
Forever.
2 years ago.
Yeah, forever.
And still now when I go to the ICU, I ask her, "Are you having a warm cookie day?" And she says, "No, I'm okay."
Yeah.
And now that you pointed out like that, I'm running through all these different moments in my life that you've taken the time to do something so minuscule. It seems to you at the time so minuscule, and then it just has this ripple effect.
Yeah, Jon, how many times we talked about, the old couple that's struggling to get the walker in the car?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you're young, you push a couple buttons, you slam the thing shut, and you set it in the car. To you, it's nothing. It took you 15 seconds, right?
Right.
But to them, it's monumental. We got an old guy standing there wobbling. We got a woman trying to keep him from falling, plus fold the cart up.
Yep.
And somebody just sashays through, folds it up, sets it in there, opens the other door. They get in, down the road you go. You don't have to know my name. You don't even have to tell me thank you.
Yep.
You made somebody just a tiny bit better that day. How many seconds do we talk about all the time?
7 to 10 or 5
7
to
to
10.
10, 7 to 12 seconds, right?
Yep.
Change people's lives in 7 to 12 seconds.
Easy peasy. Well, we're gonna be wrapping this up. If you guys want to stick around for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to be starting up a live stream here right after we're done with our friend John with a gentleman named Sean Archer. He's an ICU nurse that's currently in Massachusetts, helping battle COVID on the front lines. But John, I'm so glad to have you back, brother. I've been missing out on my Wednesday nights. I'm looking forward to starting these back up again. And as always, I look forward to my Wednesdays now as almost like a meditation for me, because there was times where I've talked to you at 4:00 in the morning driving to Dayton.
We have.
Times where I've, talked to you in the middle of the night because either my mind's reeling or your mind's reeling or whatever. And to be able to know that at a set time, I'm going to get access to sit down and have a good conversation with you. I can't wait until we get to do these in person again.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. In the meantime, we'll do what we can do.
Amen to that. So if you guys want to tune in next, we'll tentatively say next Wednesday at 7. Me and John will come up with some new questions and new topic that we'll address. I appreciate it. As always, thank you for coming in, hanging out with us here at the Apex Communications Network. Until next time, I'm Jon Almasy, and this has been another episode with our friend Jon Dietz.
See ya.